I have updated my playlist to help you find what you're looking for, anything from controversial topics that are relevant to Christian geeks, interviews with creators like author Brent Weeks and The Chosen's Dallas Jenkins, growing in faith as a geek, tabletop gaming, comic books, video games, movies, and TV shows, or you can just get to know me a little bit better. There is a playlist for you with more content being added to them all the time, so I hope you'll take a look and enjoy what you find. Thanks. Well, my editing skills are crap, but can the same thing be said about Mortal Kombat 2021? Stick around and find out. Mortal Kombat! Hey, I'm Peter Franson from christiangeekcentral.com and Spirit Blade Productions. This is my uncut review of Mortal Kombat, the reboot of the franchise in 2021. The synopsis on IMDb reads, MMA fighter Cole Young, accustomed to taking a beating for money, is unaware of his heritage, or why Outworld's Emperor Shang Tsung has sent his best warrior Sub-Zero, an otherworldly cryomancer, it's a guy who freezes stuff, to hunt Cole down. Fearing for his family's safety, Cole goes in search of Sonya Blade at the direction of Jax, a Special Forces major, who bears the same strange dragon marking Cole was born with. Soon he finds himself at the temple of Lord Raiden, an elder god and the protector of Earthrealm, who grants sanctuary to those who bear the mark. Here, Cole trains with experienced warriors Liu Kang, Kung Lao, and rogue mercenary Kano, as he prepares to stand with Earth's greatest champions against the enemies of Outworld in a high-stakes battle for the universe. All right, so this animal is, it's Mortal Kombat the movie, if you have heard of the franchise, which you probably have, then you kind of have an idea of at least something of what this movie's going to be about. It's going to be dudes and dudettes fighting brutally with also some magic powers thrown in. So yeah, it's brutal, dark fantasy, martial arts movie, lots of fighting, but far more than, a series of back-to-back 1v1 fights. There are characters that I think all the characters have some ties to other characters in the story, ties to each other, both in forms of friendship and family, and also some long-burning rivalries, and so that's really appreciated. Now, I should say, just briefly, because I know that's something that's been going on in the games, and I think maybe in the lore way back, but I think the story focus of the games really began within the last 8 to 10 years. And prior to that, during the arcade and Super NES, the console era before that, it was maybe written in the manual somewhere what their stories were and if they had any connection to each other. But it's really only been relatively recently that story's been emphasized in the fighting games. And so I'm not familiar with the fighting games. I played some of the PS1 Mortal Kombat Trilogy. I had the Game Boy port of the black and white Game Boy port of the very first game, and I watched the first 2 movies in the 90s. I think I was interested in them mostly because of the premise of, cool fighting action with dark supernatural stuff going on, but I hate fighting games mechanically, and so I never really stuck with them. So I have some knowledge of the franchise and some experience interacting with it, enough even to kind of like some characters a little bit over others, but it's really just kind of vague nostalgia to me at best. I don't really have a love for this franchise. And I think that the story and writing will likely feel glass half empty or glass half full, depending on your personal history with this intellectual property. I think it falls way short if I were to pretend for a moment that I knew nothing about the intellectual property and what I expect, or not expect, but what I ultimately ideally desire from movies. I would describe this as kind of a B-movie feeling script, stringing together fights that have surprising visual production quality compared to the script. But I do have just enough knowledge to see what they're doing with characterization, with relational ties, and motivations of the characters. I have just enough knowledge of the IP to feel glass half full about a lot of what they've done here. And there's still lots of fighting and action. I mean, to say that they've spent time investing in character and character connections and stuff is not to say that it's a sleepy, character-driven affair. It's fighting, it's lots of fighting, but I just appreciate how much it is contextualized given the source material. Also, there's some comedy thrown in, largely in the form of the character Kano, who is mocking everything that's happening, everyone involved. And he is a disgusting human being, and we're supposed to feel that way about him, but he's also a character I loved watching and I laughed at frequently, and I think we're supposed to react to him in that way as well. He was a fish out of water of a different type to me. He was a John Crichton type character from Farscape in that he was making references to Harry Potter and just making fun of people and stuff, and kind of like the audience in that regard a little bit. But he's also this really disgusting character and this really, morally bankrupt character. And so he was just a different kind of animal, and I really appreciated him throughout the movie, because I think there's some moments where I would step outside of the movie and say, this is ridiculous. Really, her name is Sonya Blade? And he never calls that out. But I mean, when you're adapting this kind of material, there are going to be some moments that a lot of viewers are likely to go, this is weird, or this is dumb, or whatever. And so to have a character in there that's calling out a lot of the stuff that's weird and dumb, I think helps me to just kind of laugh and go, yeah, I know, right? And then just kind of go along for the journey, you know, and still be able to feel some of the feely moments that I think they want me to have. Now, it sets up at least one or maybe multiple sequels, as this story isn't even about the massive tournament that the game franchise conceptually hangs on. No, there's lots of fighting that's all pre-tournament fighting between each other. And so this tournament is theoretically still to come, and some things are said near the end of this movie about the nature of death in this world of magic that, you know, is a different version of our world, to indicate that those who don't survive this movie could easily be brought back in the future, which I was really glad to realize because of the death of at least one character. Now let's talk about the cast a little bit. I'll come back to Kano now. Josh Lawson is the name of the actor who plays him, and he was just one part of this ensemble cast, but he was easily the standout for me. I mean, his choreography in fights is not near as complex. He's mostly a comedic character, and he was very charismatic as well, and so I assume that's why he was cast, and he was really a vital part of my enjoyment and my acceptance of the world and the characters, so he's really the standout performer to me. Most everyone else, I think, was likely cast for their choreography skills, their fight choreography skills. All of them felt more stiff than the average member of a big-budget ensemble movie. Not painfully wooden, you know, this isn't a serious complaint of mine, just a bit more stiff in a way that's noticeable. And when I felt emotion for the characters and what was going on with them, it was more for the situation they were in than it was because of the performance that the actors were giving. Though I did appreciate a moment where Jax was who is like this tough military special ops major kind of guy, was allowed to be vulnerable because of, he's the guy that in the trailers and in the franchise, his arms were replaced by cybernetic arms. And it's actually in relationship to that story element that he has this moment of vulnerability that I really appreciate. It's like, okay, great, some sense of humanity. You know, these actors were allowed to portray more than one-dimensional tough guys. And I really appreciated the fact that they at least tried to go there with I think all of the characters at one time or another. Even if maybe the performances weren't all that I would want them to be, they were sufficient to represent that kind of element of the character, and that's very valuable to me. Okay, as far as the stunts and visual, I mean, this is what you come for, but it's actually what I'm probably going to comment on the least. Solid fight choreography. I mean, it's a cool-looking martial arts movie. I'm not a connoisseur when it comes to the genre, and so I couldn't really compare it to a bunch of other things, but cool stuff. Lots of great fighting and going on all over the place. But the gimmick in this one, unlike many other martial arts movies, is that there's such a heavy blend-in of superpowers going on, visual effects going on that are just as involved, well, nearly as involved in all the fight scenes as the fight choreography itself. So magic exists in a big way in this version of our world, and the characters don't hold back. You know, they use their powers and their magic frequently. We're in a time now where movies can do that it's much less of a big deal to have this number of visual effects in a movie than it was back in the 90s when they were first trying to make movies like this, you know. So it definitely scratches my fantasy magic itch in both frequency and the quality of the effects for the most part. Again, there's a CG character that to my cursed eye just looks like CG. I think I have issues more when they are trying to mimic biological life compared to something that's completely fantastical, like magic energy or lightning energy, stuff that you don't really see in any kind of way in your real life. Whereas even a big monster, you've seen big animals before, you've seen people before, you know how those things move. And so to see some monster, even though it's a fantastical creature, move in a certain way or look a certain way, you know, it doesn't stand out as rough to me when it's purely fantastical magic energies and stuff like that. So I was really pretty pleased for the most part with the visual effects. All right, so let's talk about themes briefly. Is there anything of moral, philosophical, or spiritual significance going on in the themes of this thing that might trigger some worthwhile thought or conversation? I don't think so, unless you're looking for it. I don't think there was really a lot intentional that was likely going on. But what's interesting to me is that several characters have to unlock their powers, which are called arcana in this movie, and they seem to do this in their most personally driven moments, in which their power manifests and then gives them the upper hand as a result of this moment where they're really kind of tapping into their inner selves and what is most driving them. And I think it's a potential window into each character as this happens. That probably was dramatically intended, that it would be an outworking of a core character trait, you know. Arcana is triggered by anger in one. It's triggered to help a friend in another character. It's triggered to defend loved ones in a third character. And so, though likely not intentional, it reminded me that what drives us most in life, what drives us most strongly in life, is what's going to end up having the biggest impact on our lives and on the lives of those around us. And so it's worth taking time to notice, okay, what is it that we are truly most driven by, and question whether or not that deserves to be kind of like the top priority in our personal values. All right, I have no idea what your tastes are in movies, but if I were a time traveler, I'd go back in time and say, Peter, yeah, don't miss this one. You don't need to see it right away. You know, wait for rental or a streaming service that you have for some other reason. But it's, you know, it's a cool action fantasy fix, and one that you'll eventually want to watch with your boys when they're ready for it. It's rated R for strong, bloody violence and language throughout, and some crude references. All right, those are my thoughts. I would love to get yours in the comments below. Please like, share, subscribe. Click that notification bell so you don't miss my next video. I want to thank the Spirit Blade Insiders for making this review possible. For more information about becoming an insider, go to patreon.com/spiritbladeproductions. And then, of course, I hope you'll join us soon over at christiangeekcentral.com as we continue to geek out and seek the truth. Hey guys, thanks for tuning in. We've got a ton going on here at Spirit Blade Productions and Christian Geek Central, including our in-depth Bible study for geeks, movie, game, and other entertainment reviews or commentary, live streams, Christian geek news, original audio dramas, and tons more. And on top of all that, you can become a Spirit Blade insider with an influential voice and get access to exclusive content and rewards. It's your involvement as a patron that will keep all of this going and growing, so I want to thank you for your consideration in that. For more information, please check out our Patreon page through the link below at patreon.com/spiritbladeproductions. Thanks for listening.